That's right. Bear down, Bears fans. It's time for another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast, Bears Banter, powered by Second City Gridiron. Bill Zimmerman with you. And we are back after a brief hiatus there, a late June hiatus, because it is July and training camp is rapidly approaching. So we've done this the last couple of years. So we are going to continue a tradition, and that is to have Robert Schmitz on, of course, the chief editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, formerly, of course, us here at the Windy City Gridiron podcast channel. And see, Robert and I have a problem, is that neither of us really understand the concept of shutting up. So this is going to be a two-part episode. We're going to focus on the offense here for part one. I don't know how long this is going to be. We'll try and keep it into the realm of a normal length podcast, and the defense will be part two. So Robert, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
Gosh, I mean, what an off season. I feel like we had all of the talk of an off season condensed between December and the draft. And I don't know how you feel, but it's like everything buttoned itself up. And now we just got to wait and see how all these questions get answered. I can't wait to talk through all these questions with you. What are we going to be looking for? How do we feel like all these different pieces may play out? But it's been a really comfy June and July, like a hot summer day, right?
Yeah, no, it really has. And you bring up this off season, and we may as well start there. Obviously, we're going to get to Caleb Williams here in a minute. But when Dan Weeder was on this podcast in like early April, he talked about this off season, which wasn't even over yet. The Bears hadn't even drafted Caleb Williams. We knew it was going to happen, but we didn't know if Odunze was going to be here. And he talked about it. In like 5 years or 10 years, someone in Chicago is going to, some journalist, Adam Johns, somebody, is Kevin Fishbane, is going to write a book about the 2024 off season for the Chicago Bears and how it potentially was this franchise altering off season on multiple levels, not just the Justin Fields, Caleb Williams thing, but the decision to keep Matt Eberflus, the stadium and the developments there, like this entire off season, even like Hard Knocks and all these things that have never been in the realm of something the Chicago Bears would consider. It's such a massive shift and change from business as usual at Hallis Hall. I mean, the idea that Ted Cruz was brought in, and I understand a lot of Bears fans don't care about what's going on behind the scenes in this regard, like I do, a media nerd. Ted Cruz was brought in as a media expert from the Kansas City Chiefs because the Chicago Bears understood what they had in a quarterback, what kind of star they had in a quarterback, and that they didn't have the supports for how this was going to be handled in the media. Like, if you have Patrick Mahomes, you need someone who knows how to handle the media requests for Patrick Mahomes. So this has been a massive change. I know Kevin Warren gets made fun of, Robert, but I think his fingerprints are in a lot of places here for the good and for positive impact on this franchise. This has been a wild off season, and I am really curious over the next 5 to 10 years how often we look back at 2024 as a pivot point.
I agree. I mean, what a wild offseason. The Bears went from a team defined by, for gosh, as long as I've known them, and I'm 29 years old. So they've been a team defined by quality defenses, but it's also been, as Muhsin Muhammad described it, the town where receivers go to die. We've never had a star quarterback, as Roger Goodell good and well knows. And suddenly they have a three-piece receiver set that's as good as anybody in the league. They've got a quarterback that not only has gobs and gobs of talent, but also history of using it. And it feels to me, look, this part is subjective, but I feel like he's got loads of star power that I haven't seen from a Chicago quarterback in quite some time.
Yeah.
This feels like the obvious powder keg that everybody's treating it like it is, right? We're all looking at this team like a time bomb, and it's just a matter of when it's going to go off and what color is the explosion. But it also feels like with Kevin Warren, you got to shift from silent, never speaks Ted Phillips to somebody who talks a lot in Kevin Warren. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad. I mean, I feel as if Ryan Poles operates in a very different way. The Bears have been ultra loyal for as long as I've known them. And in one offseason, he got you mad about trading Khalil Mack for too little. Then he immediately got sent off Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn in the moment where everybody thought that Matt Eberflus should be fired. He decided to retain him. And then when everybody thought that Justin Fields should be retained, he decided to trade him for a trade offer that is borderline insulting. And there's not really another way to look at it. And so it's been a very different wing of Chicago Bears football. And I got to tell you, Bill, I'm really refreshed. It's not that I agree with everything. I mean, I'm sitting here I disagree with a lot of the way Matt Eberflus tries to run his team, but that doesn't mean I'm not sitting here saying, hey, these guys feel like they have a plan. And whether that plan works or not, we'll see. But we've followed too many Bears teams where they put one foot in one bucket and another foot in another bucket. And it's very obvious it's not going to work. This is 2 feet into a very different and unique bucket from the way the Bears have operated over the years. Hey, it's a whole new thing. It is a whole new thing.
Yeah, it's really different. And yeah, like you said, Ted Phillips never spoke. Kevin Warren's constantly speaking. But you know who's not speaking anymore? George McCaskey. Like, we don't hear from George anymore because Kevin is handling both those roles. And that's okay. We don't need to hear from George. I don't need to hear George stand in front of a podium and go, I don't know anything about football, but here's why I made this football decision. I don't need to hear that anymore. So I'm good with the direction this has pivoted and where this has changed. And, you know, while we start talking about the pivot, we'll talk about Caleb Williams here, and we'll try and do it differently because the Caleb Williams conversation what feels so exhaustive because this conversation didn't start on draft day where it wouldn't be exhaustive at all. It didn't start even in March when Justin Fields got traded.
Nope.
It didn't even start in January when the season ended and the Bears had the number 1 pick. This started in October. So we have been talking about this for 9 or 10 months now at this point. But you talked about the gobs of talent of Caleb Williams. This is where I am most interested. I'm going to talk about off the field, which is interesting because all we heard about in September and October was that Caleb Williams was a problem off the field. And that has clearly been proven to be, you know, basically 100% false. But when I look at the last, we'll say 3 failed quarterbacks, and when I say failed quarterbacks, I'm putting Jay Cutler in that category. I'm sorry, Cuddy fans, but things didn't work out for Jay Cutler. When you trade 2 first-round picks for Jay Cutler, being 500 for 8 years isn't what you had in mind. So, and was that all Jay Cutler's fault? No, of course not. But I'm just talking about the off the field demeanor of these last 3 quarterbacks. And Justin Fields was clearly popular with players and with fans. But Justin Fields, and sorry, Bears fans, I'm just going off what has been reported by the media, looks like he had a little bit of a coachability problem. And as much as we love standing up, Justin Fields stood up and said, what Luke Getsy wants, you know, with that press conference, what Luke Getsy wants to do doesn't work for me. So I'm basically going to do my thing. While that's a nice stance for a player to have, at the same time, Robert, that says, I'm not doing things the way the offensive coordinator wants to do them. And we heard about the issues with Nick Foles and some of the stuff, you know, rookie year. So Justin Fields had a little bit of a coachability problem. It's not to say he's going to fail in Pittsburgh. It's just what happened here. Mitch Trubisky, I've always said, he's everybody's favorite little kid brother, right? Like, you know, Kyle Long loves that guy and still talks about how much he loves that guy. But I feel like Kyle Long walking off the practice field, put his arm around Mitch Trubisky and gave him a noogie like that and smiled while he did it. Jay Cutler, there was an attitude problem. We don't have to pretend there wasn't. He wasn't, because of that attitude problem, he was not a well-liked teammate. Didn't mean that 52 guys hated him, but there were plenty of guys who are like, I don't like dealing with his crap. So you've had 3 quarterbacks that for different reasons had some sort of issue off the field. Now, when I look at Caleb Williams, I see a leader that the leader of men that Mitch Trubisky didn't quite have. I see the right attitude in the locker room and on the field that Jay Cutler didn't have. And it would appear so far that Caleb Williams is talking to Will Hewitt like I was able to do, and hearing things from Shane, from people around Shane Waldren. It appears that Caleb Williams really wants to be coached up and wants to learn as much as possible. So when I look at these things, Robert, talent aside, which we all see the phenomenal plays on the field, it's the off the field stuff that really right now is making me feel more confident than I ever have that this quarterback, and what the Bears have done to support him, that this quarterback is going to succeed here.
It's such a messy conversation because you just brought up 3 names, and I am so interested in the 30% of fans that that got mad at you mentioning any of those 3 names, but still listened to this point right now. Which of those 3 names are they going to comment that you're not being gracious enough towards? Because we love our quarterbacks. Of course we do. We spent years with these guys. They're the ones that when the Bears go play the Packers in Sunday Night Football every single year, they put their picture up on the TV and we say, please, Jay, please, can we win this one? I mean, I remember it. But Bill, if Caleb Williams starts and wins 10 games this season, which is a huge if, he will have equaled Justin Fields' tenure in 3 years in 1. If Mitch Trubisky is not somebody that I think anybody is still debating whether or not he was successful, and if Jay Cutler is the epitome of Chicago quarterbacking success since Sid Luckman, therein lies the problem. It's this problem that you see among Bears fans. And that's okay. I get it. Don't you get it? We've all been there. Right. We've all lived it. We know the standard from a relativistic perspective is real bad. And it means that a guy like Jay Cutler might be the most talented quarterback that we've had in Chicago. Since do you think he was more talented than McMahon?
I think he was probably more talented than McMahon. Playing you're down 4 on your own 20 with 3 minutes to go. Who would you rather have? Give me Jim McMahon. But for the other 57 minutes, you got to take Jay Cutler.
Well, I mean, what, down 4 at our own 20 with a couple minutes to go? Give me Mitch just about. That was when the lights came on. That was when
Mitch shined. Like,
that's it.
I mean, it sounds crazy, but that is when Mitch shined, when there was less coaching and he got to play backyard football. Mitch was better.
The funny part to me about Caleb Williams is that generally, and I mean, like, you go through different takes that we've all had. I was a huge Mitch fan in 2018, soured on him hard in 19. I was a huge Fields fan up through early 23, soured on him really quickly. And I'm recognizing a pattern in my own evaluation, Bill, and that's that normally I take a look at what the quarterback can do. I see the gap between him and somebody really good, and I say, well, we'll close that gap over time, and then it doesn't really work that way. My favorite part about Williams' film, I know you've seen it too, is that if you need a singular or like a pack of examples of Caleb throwing over the middle on his second read, you will find them. It is not every single play. It is not every single game, but he has done it. If you need to see Caleb hitting an outside the numbers throw with precision, he's done it. You need to see Caleb firing a laser to any level of the field. He's done it. You need to see Caleb moving in the pocket, avoiding a sack. He's done it. You need to see Caleb making a play with his leg. He's done it. You need to see Caleb keeping his eyes downfield and throwing well after the play has been extended. Oh, there's highlights and highlights and highlights. It'll take you 8 to 10 minutes to watch through all of that in college. My favorite part about Caleb Williams is that I think the tape says what you just said, it affirms everything you're saying about how Caleb's tape looks like a wild child that understands he can do anything, and he's literally not sure of what his coach wanted him to do in terms of how to go about winning. He seems as if he's come to the NFL and he's demanding of his coaches, I need you to give me the teammates in receivers, and I need you to give me the plan that I need to win my 8 Super Bowls in Chicago. And as much as I know a lot of people think that Caleb is a fairly inauthentic person, past a certain point, Bill, it is hard to fake a personality for 3 to 7 months. And this might just be who he is. And if he's this arrogant leader that really believes he will be a genre-defining player, why would I not hope he does it? Like, why would I not get all the way behind him and say, go define the generation? The Bears have a unique opportunity to, but I've hit my time. I need to serve it back to you. It's all to say, I feel as if the film is as good as the personality. Maybe the personality slightly bigger because he's a pretty big personality, but you're looking at the arm angles of his releases. You're looking at how quickly he gets the ball out, the velocity with which he can get the ball out, his feet in the pocket, his sense for pressure. There are so many of these failure points that we've seen with quarterbacks in the past that Caleb still needs to figure out now and again. The linebacker over the middle of the field that he did not see, but you can also tell he's looking at the field because he sees the linebacker 8 times out of 10, and we just need to tune it up to 9.5. Does this all make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes plenty of sense. And that's where obviously who Caleb Williams is now as a football player isn't good enough. That's fine to say. Peyton Manning when he came into the league, Tom Brady when he came into the league, none of them were good
Would
enough.
be weird if he was. Lawrence wasn't good enough.
Right. CJ Stroud put together a hell of a season, but still, did he win the Super Bowl? No, he didn't. So even CJ Stroud, who had the greatest rookie season of any quarterback of all time, wasn't good enough. So like there is growth that you need to expect to see. And what we're basically, I think what Robert and I are both trying to say is the foundation is there. Like, my significant other is a school teacher, and she talks about all the time building the foundation for kids. Like, you can't teach a kid multiplication unless they know addition. Like you got to build the house properly. You got to, you build the foundation, then you got to build the first floor, second floor, third floor. That Tom Brady, when everyone saw that Tom Brady clip that was like 7 or 8 minutes that he did, I think it was on the NFL Insiders, where he's talking about, all right, what am I doing when I'm walking up to the line of scrimmage? And he's basically sitting there like a ninja going through everything. And it's awesome. And you're sitting there saying, well, that's why Tom Brady, if he can condense his 8 minutes down to 30-second snippets, he's going to be really good on the Fox broadcast. But Tom Brady, Matt Nagy used to talk about his 2.0 offense, and I don't want to bring back nightmares for Bears fans, but like, Tom Brady right there was talking, Caleb Williams is on NFL 101 this season, and he's going to try and grow from there. Tom Brady, what he's talking about is basically, he's going for his thesis in the NFL. Like, there are multiple levels that we need to build as the Bears franchise around Caleb Williams in terms of building him into becoming a superstar Hall of Fame quarterback. Will he ever get there? I don't know, but this is the first time where you really sit there and say, and seeing all the failures and where they went wrong for multiple reasons. Jay Cutler's revolving door of offensive coordinators, Jay Cutler's offensive line, Mitch Trubisky having the offensive line in 2017, but no receivers. 2018, you get the receivers, but there's a coaching change. By 2020, the whole coaching staff has given, 2019, really, the whole coaching staff has given up on him, and he doesn't have the supports around him. Justin Fields and everything they did incorrectly with him, putting him in a terrible situation. 2021, not getting, the training camp snaps because Andy Dalton and Nick Foles apparently needed them all. Like, when we look at these things and see in hindsight the failures, and now look at it, it almost gives us a unique perspective as fans, because like the Green Bay Packers fans, God bless them, you have to be 45 years old to remember bad quarterback play. And it looks like they're going to be in the same situation. And I don't want to make Bears fans sour, but Green Bay Packers fans don't know what to look for at this point if they're screwing up their quarterback, because they never have. Right. We've screwed up quarterbacks for 30 years. We know exactly what not to do. And we're seeing this regime do the right things. Build up an offensive line best they can at this point. Get 3 ridiculously good wide receivers, a solid tight end, a pass-catching running back, an offensive coordinator who has a history of helping develop quarterbacks. They are putting everything into place to what would look like finally doing this the right way.
I agree. And I mean, there's another element to this that when you look at Brady, when you look at Peyton Manning, when you look at Aaron Rodgers, when you look at, honestly, I'll throw Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. What do these guys all have in common? I'm not going to make you answer it. Malleability. They can win in multiple ways, and they know how to alter their game. And one of my favorite things as we come out of the Justin Fields era, Bill, I hope this isn't too incendiary, but to me, one of the hardest pills to swallow looking back at 2023 film is that I like the game plans Luke Getsy came up with in weeks 1 and 2. Maybe I'm not allowed to say that, but there are open receivers all across the field. Getsy identified holes in the Tampa and Green Bay defenses, and that just wasn't how Fields played ball. Standing back in the pocket, getting to read number 2 and 3, ripping it on time, things that I think would be kind of normal in terms of quarterback stuff. Like, I'm not trying to be a hater. Fields did some things so well that it opened up avenues for offenses that no other quarterback had access to. I can't be explicit about his talent enough, but there were some plays that I think Fields left on the field that trickled down to Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, they would have found, and they would have made it look uncomplicated, right?
Sure.
And you look at that and you think about the failure of 2023, and part of me thinks, Bill, that at that point you could look back and you could say, well, they failed in 2022, not having the talent to realize you couldn't do it in 2023. But I digress. One of my favorite parts about Caleb Williams is that throughout his 22 and 23 seasons, the 2022 Heisman, the 2023 disaster, you saw him win, or you saw him play the UCLA game as an in-structure quarterback that is finding the hot read, getting the ball out of his hand, taking as few sacks as possible up until the end of a half in the red zone, where if he doesn't make a play, you're kicking a field goal anyways. So we've seen him play the, call it NFL style of ball. You'll also see those games against Arizona State and Stanford where he knows his team is better and he's going to push the boundary of what he's allowed to do and find touchdowns on plays where you simply can't do that against a better opponent. This feeling of he knows who he's going up against. Go watch that Notre Dame game again. Yeah, there's 3 interceptions that he would like back, but the other snaps are tight. They are controlled. They are finding a tight window throw that he doesn't attempt in other football games because he doesn't respect the DBs as much as he respects that Notre Dame defense. To me, Bill, there's one play I'm going to go back to. I think it was against Stanford, but I bet you've seen it before. It's the one in 23 where he took the snap, flipped his shoulder around and throws a back shoulder touchdown ball 25 yards downfield to a receiver that's fading out of the end zone. You know the one I'm talking about?
I think so.
It's very aware. My favorite part about a play like that is that Caleb knows he has his answer on the outside. He knows he has to make a precision throw to that back shoulder area to make sure it's safe. And he also knows he's going to have to get his feet and shoulder to a spot. It reminds me of the difference between, I'm trying to think of like a no-namer everybody knows. I can't think of one. So I'm just going to say Josh Green, because that's the guy who comes to my mind. He's a Mavericks role player, and he is not Kyrie Irving when it comes to his ball handling ability. But think about, Bill, the ways that Kyrie can attack a defense that most other NBA players can't.
Sure.
Most players don't have, they don't have the skill set to say, I'm going to cross right to left. I'll put the ball through my legs. I'll explode 2 steps forward. I'll spin. And as I'm falling backwards, I'll flick the ball up with my left hand and I'm going to score it 70% of the time. Caleb is that kind of guy where his bag is so deep and well rehearsed and well practiced that when he gets it in his head how he wants to attack a defense, he's been historically near unstoppable. Now, if you confuse him, of course, you'll spring a leak in a lot of different parts of his games. But that's a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, we saw Lamar Jackson melt down just this last year in the playoffs. I think Lamar's a dang good player. We've seen Josh Allen have those moments where he just mauls in the middle of the regular season, throws 3 interceptions, fumbles, and the Bills don't do anything. It happens. But the fact that you can start with that deep bag, to me, is so exciting. It's unlike anything we've seen. And it has guys just like us doing just what we've done and kind of swan-songing other years of Bears quarterbacks,
right?
Because this feels so different. You know what I mean?
It does. It does feel different. And I think that's reason enough for excitement. But I think what's interesting here when we do enter training camp and we're getting all the Caleb Williams reports is trying to figure out, and you and I talked about this with Zach Pearson, and you and I talked about when we were setting up the podcast a little bit, trying to figure out exactly how good Caleb Williams looks in practice. And this isn't a knock on the Chicago media when I say this, because it's not their fault. But, Brad Biggs comes to Chicago Bears training camp and every practice and has for 25 years or whatever. But Brad Biggs is not going to training camp practices to watch Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the elite quarterbacks. He's not doing that because he covers the Chicago Bears. And I bring that up because, like, when Peter King or Albert Breer in the past have done their training camp tours and write up the Chicago Bears, I remember Peter King showing up to a training camp when Mitch Trubisky, I don't know if it was 2017 or 2018, but he showed up and he basically wrote a scathing article that Trubisky stinks, basically. And, Bears fans, rile up together, and rise up and no, he was at just a bad day. And we have that kind of thing. But when I look at it and we bring up like the Caleb Williams go routes that he did in rookie minicamp, camp, where he basically was hitting everyone in the exact same spot and he looked phenomenal. Well, here's the thing. That's great. And we haven't seen a Bears quarterback do that. So that's different. That's good. But is that what Tom Brady does all the time? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know where Caleb Williams is compared to the Bradys and the Allens or the Kirk Cousins and the Geno Smiths and the Jared Goffs, because we don't have a point of reference. We can watch an NFL game, Sunday Night Football, and say, well, that's how the quarterback is supposed to look in the game, but we don't know exactly how it translates to training camp and in practices. And the Chicago media, because of the fact that they have covered so much crappy quarterback play for 3 decades, they don't know quite what they're looking for either. I'm not saying they don't know at all, but in terms of knowing, is this just the play of a pretty good quarterback or a phenomenal quarterback? It looks a little different. And I think that's what you keep hearing from the media members, is it looks different coming out of his hand. It just feels different. All these kind of different non-tangible aspects of watching Caleb Williams play football. But in terms of really truly understanding, it kind of goes back to like the Justin Fields statistics in the 7-on-7s last year, where Justin Fields was 16 of 18 with 3 touchdowns, and everyone's like, oh, he's going to be unstoppable. And then Sylvie comes out and goes, yeah, but guys, he was holding on to the ball 6 to 8 seconds, so I don't know if that really counts. And people attack Sylvie. So I'll be really curious how the media covers this, Robert, because I just don't know if they have, because of the team they cover, if they have the points of reference they need to truly know where Caleb Williams is in his rookie progress in terms of, can he step in and do this right away at a pretty high level?
Well, and that's the thing, right, Bill? First of all, I don't know if they do either. But the other piece to this that I think, look, I'm going to dredge up something that I don't know if everybody's going to like it, but I don't really have a choice here. Bill, we are left in this position covering the team that was last year, or at the minimum, comparing Caleb Williams to the quarterback that came before him. And nobody likes this topic because it was exhaustively debated. You said since October, when the Bears were 0-3 and lost to the Broncos, when the Bears were 0-2 and lost to Tampa, this conversation came up about Justin Fields versus Caleb Williams since September. So it's been a long time. But just taking the 2023 season and trying to look at it through almost any objective statistical lens, so that I'm trying to take my eyes out of it. You look at Justin Fields in his adjusted EPA per play, he was 23rd, below Gardner Minshew, below Browns Joe Flacco, below Geno Smith, below Kyler Murray in limited action. You look at Justin Fields' success rate, he was 33rd in the NFL, below Kenny Pickett, below Joshua Dobbs, below Sam Howell, below Ryan Tannehill, just so everybody's clear on what this means. Adjusted EPA per play puts a cap on how bad your turnovers can hurt you and how much your touchdowns can help you. It's trying to find some more consistent value. Success rate is how many plays did you result in 5 yards or more on first down, half the field on second down, and third down conversion.
Right.
Now, where Justin really shines is when you look at his EPA per CPO or EPA plus completion percentage over expectation composite. And yes, I'm aware that I'm really starting to test the nerd band of some people. This puts him dead average at 16th because the throws he attempted, he completed at a higher rate than usual. He didn't attempt as many throws as a lot of his compatriots that'll throw that ball out there with a 15% chance of completion. And yeah, of course, it gets tipped away. I say all this, Bill, because as much as you and I could sit here and talk about Caleb Williams might be a star, the Bears quarterback he's replacing, if you want to use PFF, per quarterback grade, he was 24th, if memory serves, or at least he was right there on the lip of the bottom quarter. The quarterback that Caleb is replacing was not outstandingly successful last season, which creates this perfect storm of opportunity where you and I have said it before. If Caleb hits the league, boots on the ground, the 21st best quarterback in football, and slowly grows his way to, what do you think, 12th best quarterback in football by the end of his rookie year, this could be a legitimate one-for-one upgrade at the quarterback position, because it's not like the Bears are really coming off of much, which is a hard pill to swallow because Justin was the only reason that the 2022 season was modestly fun to watch. It's Bill, I'll pull something for anybody that's followed Bill Zimmerman for a long time. Bill was one of the premier that I've seen Jordan Howard haters. And people like me that were much younger and much more emotional at the time were mad, to be honest, because Bill, Jordan Howard was the only reason the 2016 season was watchable.
Oh yeah.
And when a guy saves a year of your life, it feels like you feel indebted to him. And so within that, I completely understand anybody looking at Justin Fields and saying, this guy made 2022 worth watching. It was fun. That stretch of 6 games was an electricity I've never felt as a Bears fan. What are you talking about? EPA over per play or success rate? Get that crap off my podcast. But we're trying to be objective. The hope here is that the Bears can build a winner. This stuff helps. And so I think it's interesting when you look at this. We don't need to compare Justin to anybody else. But, Bill, 1-for-1, I do wonder how quickly Caleb can surpass where the Bears have been at quarterback coming off of Fields and Trubisky.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing is Justin Fields, and you brought up the numbers, is not a league average passer. He just isn't. He is towards the bottom of the league passing. And again, we're taking away the legs, but that's where he is as a passer, which doesn't bring you success as an offense. You need you need the passing game. It just wasn't there.
Both of those stats included legs, if that makes any difference to you.
No, and I realize the legs come in there, but like you said, EPA per play with CPOE composite gets him right in the league minimum.
Exactly.
When you start isolating the passing numbers is when you start getting down into the low 20s,
right,
the 30s in terms of where he ranks. So the bottom line here for me is that this is a manageable schedule again this season. There's everything's put in place. So there's going to be a lot of heat on Matt Eberflus if things don't work out. And we're going to get to Eberflus later because we got plenty to get to on the offense. So while we're kind of transitioning here, I think it makes more sense to transition to Shane Waldren before we get to some of the other position groups, because that ties more closely with Caleb Williams. So talking about Waldren, and we can compare him to Getsy if you want, or just talk about what Waldren does. I think the basic premise here with Waldren is that, well, first of all, for the analysts that said when Waldren was first brought in that, oh, well, he's doing the same thing as Luke Getsy's doing, so it would make sense that Justin Fields stays. The thing there is that Shane Waldren does even more of the things I think that Luke Getsy likes to do, which were even less of the things that Justin Fields likes to do. But from what we have been told, it's the type of things that Caleb Williams really wants. Now, again, we need to see it in execution, but it's what Caleb Williams really wants in his offense that he hasn't been able to have in the past for whatever reason, whether it was the play style of USC, whether it was the lack of talent, whatever it might be. But, talking to some guys around the OTAs, seeing multiple plays where it is just the ball comes into Caleb and it's out immediately.
Mm-hmm.
The type of plays that Justin Fields was not comfortable executing because Justin Fields wanted the play to come to him and he wanted to react. And Shane Waldren is more of a, no, the defense is going to react to what I'm doing. And it should be a lot more quick hitting plays. It's not that Caleb Williams isn't going to big play hunt. He's absolutely going to, I think, be allowed to do that. But I think the style that Shane Waldron brings in a lot of ways is what Caleb Williams wants to run and hasn't been able to. Again, if everything we're hearing is accurate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at least from what I've seen on Seahawks film, and granted, when you're picking apart an offensive coordinator's film, there's a balance of everything. What does Geno like? Because any offensive coordinator worth his salt isn't going to run anything long term that his quarterback doesn't like to run.
Unless you're Matt Nagy.
Unless you're Matt Nagy, unfortunately. What does the does the staff think the offensive line can block? What do you have at receiving weapons? Like, what's going to work for DK Metcalf versus Tyler Lockett versus nobody else? All these factors play into everything. So trying to figure out how much of it is Shane Waldron is a little complicated. But from what I've seen, Bill, it sure feels as if Shane has a much heavier emphasis on, I'm going to call something fairly bare bones after a whole lot of motion. Like, they use more pre-snap motion than Getsy did. They will line up in an objectively weird formation like DK Metcalf in the backfield and then flex him out to the position you would have expected because you want to see the defense move. And like you're talking about, give the quarterback as clear a picture as possible of, on your two reads on this play, what do you think is going to be open? And if they're not open, figure it out. Which on one hand, Bill, might sound like it's too much leash, like enough leash to hang yourself in the old way of saying things. But also there's an aspect of Luke Getsy's offense where Justin could stand in the pocket for 4 seconds sometimes and the play would not be over. And that is not good, in my opinion. Like, there's a point where you have to be done with the play call. You see this with Pat Mahomes. You saw this with Tom Brady. Like, the quarterback needs a point where it is time to figure it out. Go be a ball player, as my old coaches used to say, right? And especially for somebody like Caleb Williams, if he has a designated spot in the play call where, okay, we're at about 3.5 seconds, or we're at about 3 seconds, my alarm bells are going off. I need to find some room, get out, and figure something out. That's much better than sitting in the pocket, waiting for DJ Moore to finally break on that big dig at the 25 yards off the line of scrimmage. And he's just not quite there yet. And so I got to just hang in here, and we got strip sacked. I mean, that's the Luke Getsy experience. And I think Shane Waldron's lightweight method of doing things post-snap, but heavyweight method of doing things pre-snap fits the way that, honestly, it fits the way that Caleb Williams ran the air raid in college. And it's very stylistically similar. I'm surprised at how well it meshes.
Yeah, no, it does. It should mesh well. And the one thing I'll be interested to see is the play calling, especially in the fourth quarter.
Yes,
because there is a big looming question out there that we don't have an answer to. And again, we'll focus more on Matt Eberflus later, but it's worth bringing up now with Shane Waldron. And that is the aggressiveness or lack of aggressiveness in fourth quarter play calling. Now, people I talked to said that Luke Getsy was basically hamstrung in terms of what he could do in the fourth quarter because Matt Eberflus wanted the Bears offense to shift into a conservative mode. Now, why did Matt Eberflus want to do that? Was it just because he is a defensive coach and he wants to have his defense win the game? And that's a conservative thought process in the fourth quarter that a lot of defensive coaches tend to have. If it is, that's a problem. Now, people told me, Robert, that this was more of a Matt Eberflus did not trust Justin Fields to make the right decisions in the fourth quarter, meaning that if they had 3rd and 7 on the 28-yard line. They just wanted to run the ball and get 3 points because they were afraid if they picked a pass to try and get the first down, that Fields would lose 11 yards and knock them out of field goal range, or that he would make a bad interception. Is that fair to Justin? Fans, you can decide on your own. But that is what I was told the coaching staff felt about things in the fourth quarter. So when there was mind-numbing run after run, settling for field goals, really making questionable decisions that we all killed Matt Eberflus for good reason, what was the reason behind it? Was it a lack of trust in the quarterback? Or was it, this is the play style he wants to have? Right. If this play style continues, and I get it, Caleb Williams is a rookie and it's tough to trust rookie quarterbacks. If this type of play style continues, this is going to be a problem for the Bears and this new era, the Caleb Williams era moving forward. And not only is it going to be a problem for fans and for wins, it's going to be a problem for Caleb Williams as well, which could create conflict eventually. So I am really curious, Robert, to see what kind of play calling happens in the fourth quarter. Does Eberflus give Waldren full reign to do what he wants? Does he trust Caleb Williams? It's a fascinating question to me.
It's really fascinating, and it's one that I don't think anybody's going to get an answer they like for at least 10 weeks. I mean, I would just...
Might be a couple of years.
I would just strap in your harness for a hot second, because like you're talking about, Bill, chances are against the Titans, if the Bears have the ball at the 15, let's go with the 27-yard line, and it's 2nd and 8, you're going to see a wide zone run to the right, and then you're going to see a trap run up the middle. And everybody's going to say, put the ball in your rookie's hands. And I mean, it's funny. I thought you couldn't have painted this better, Bill. We constantly said, why on earth would you not give the ball to Justin Fields in that situation? And if Matt Eberflus had come out ever publicly and said, do you really want me to do that? Did you see what happened against, Denver? At the very end of the game, we threw an interception. Against Minnesota, we fumbled twice. Against Arizona, we threw a pick on a play that was wide open. Against all kinds of these other positions that the Bears have put themselves in, we had Denver wrapped up and we fumbled and they scored a touchdown and we lost. Why do you want me to trust this kid? If he had said that, because that was somehow how he felt, nobody would have accepted it.
No.
I mean, you're talking about automatic calls for firing. But it's a rookie quarterback. My guess would be they're going to try to win the game in 3 quarters and hold on to what they got. And the good news is, look at San Francisco. I mean, Bill, we have quietly watched Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan make very weird fourth quarter decisions. Lump Andy Reid in that if you want to.
Sure.
For years. They just wrap up enough games in 3 quarters that nobody really talks about it. I mean, 49er games are over by the time you get to 10 minutes left in the fourth. So are the Bears going to get there immediately? Dude, I hope so. Probably not. But I would be shocked if Matt Eberflus isn't going to take coaching this defense fairly personally. That, hey, I know I have a rookie quarterback. That means that in this season, when all this pressure's on me, we're going to take the field goal. That's a 4-point lead. I can keep him out of the end zone. And hopefully that means we don't see Justin Jones dropping into coverage, like all the memes they're in. But I would hope we get cutting edge, aggressive Eberflus as opposed to sit in Tampa 2 and lose Sean McDermott. But I guess we'll just have to take what we get. I just don't think we're going to like the answer until Caleb earns his trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's going to be growing pains. There's no question about it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. This is Bears Banter, the training camp preview with Robert Schmitz of the Bears blog. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back into the podcast. We are going to start discussing the rest of the offense. We've spent a big chunk here talking about Caleb Williams and the support around Caleb Williams. Well, let's get to that support, Robert, and let's start with the wide receivers. I'm not worried about anyone past the top 4 because we have to get to special teams, and we'll get to special teams.
I don't get to talk about Velus. Are you kidding me?
We're going to talk about Velus when we get to special teams because we don't need to talk about Velus right now. But we've got 4 receivers we can talk about here at the top that I think will actually be involved in the offense, although the 4th one questionable, depends on how healthy the rest of them are. But this wide receiving core, and if we, we'll talk about tight ends here in a second. If you need to talk about Cole, as you talk to receivers, that's fine. But this wide receiving core is the potential to be something really special, really unique, and not anything we've ever seen. And I think if we're going to compare offensive talent, there's only one direction to go, which is the Mark Trestman era. Because at that point, when you had Matt, around Cutler, when you had Matt Forte, Martellus Bennett, Alshon Jeffrey, and Brandon Marshall, that's the most talented offense I'm pretty confident the Chicago Bears have ever had in terms of skill position players. We don't need to get into the offensive line here, but in skill position players. But when I look at this team, Robert, right now, and I compare, not only can you basically make a comparable player to everyone, although running back, not what Matt Forte was, but there's enough there. We don't need to get into that. But someone, DJ Moore, not comparing the actual style, just the talent level.
Yep.
DJ Moore and Brandon Marshall. Keenan Allen is much better than Alshon Jeffrey. Rome Odunze doesn't have, I don't even remember who the third receiver was on that team. Earl Bennett, maybe? I don't.
Earl Bennett.
I don't remember, but Rome Odunze, the potential there, the Bears never have 3 wide receivers. They had to do 2 wide receiver sets with Martellus Bennett and Forte out there. They didn't have the personnel. They didn't have the depth that they have right now. And it's such a fun thing because as Bears fans, we have been craving since the Eric Kramer season. If you're old enough, in the late 90s or mid 90s, we've been craving that offense, and we got a glimpse of it with Jay Cutler, with Mark Trestman, maybe a glimpse of it a little bit in 2018, but we haven't seen consistent offense that's driven not only by the quarterback, but the talent around the quarterback. And for the first time, potentially in 105 years of football, the Chicago Bears have enough talent around the quarterback to help lift him up as well as a rookie.
I could not agree more. And I think my favorite part when we talk about DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, let's focus on those two. Not that Rome doesn't matter, but we'll bring him in later, is that the Bears have in DJ Moore, this explosive, dynamic player that is a threat to score on any time he touches the ball. I mean, his Washington game, I think, is a perfect representation of how dangerous DJ Moore can be. He's an outstanding athlete. His balance after the catch speaks for itself. What he is not is an every down receiver. That's not me trying to hate on DJ Moore. It's me saying that DJ thrives on explosive cuts in the intermediate area. And when it comes to running a curl, Bill, if I'm allowed to say this, he does not sell the go and drop his hips into the curl the way that some of these other technicians do, like we've seen over the years. This should take you all the way back to Allen Robinson, especially in 2018, where Allen Robinson was a threat to catch the ball on literally any down. How often was he going to score? Well, not as often, because he wasn't going to run a 45-yard deep ball. And when he was going to catch it for exactly 45 yards and only just. Yak doesn't come to everybody the same way, but Keenan Allen gives the Bears this opportunity to take a lot of mental weight off of Caleb Williams and run option routes, where the answer is throw it to Keenan. It's just a matter of whether he's going to run the in, the out, the slant, or maybe he'll pop a fade. But just wait till he looks back at you and then throw him the ball. You don't even need to use anticipation on this one. Your release is fast enough. Just let him make eye contact with you and throw the ball.
Yeah, and there's the reason everyone says Keenan Allen is the quarterback's best friend.
Exactly. On those plays, as I've heard them coached, if Caleb throws an interception, it is Keenan Allen's fault. Like, this is very process driven off of the quarterback, as opposed to, let me check Darnell Mooney's leverage, then I'll work back to DJ Moore. And if I don't like it, I'll peek at Cole Kmet, and Justin's already gotten sacked, right? Because sometimes you just don't have that kind of time. I love the synergy with what Keenan gives the offense and what DJ Moore already had. And then where Rome fits in, honestly, I almost want Rome to show us, because I think Rome has a little more gas than we saw at Washington. It feels to me like Rome Odunze throttles down at about the 15 to 20-yard mark, and I don't know why. It's not like Michael Penix didn't have enough arm to shut the ball out there. So for all I know, either Rome doesn't have the juice that I think he might, or that's possible. I want to make sure I cite that. Or Washington's receiver coach didn't want him to just run himself out because he's a guy that they were founding the entire offense around. And frankly, it's college. Like, you've seen the Texas receivers. Sometimes they just don't move on certain snaps. So if they were telling Rome to basically conserve his energy, I get it. Not so in the NFL, though. I mean, Rome could be the deep play threat. Rome, I hope, learns from Keenan Allen and basically steals that ability to be an every down guy, because I think that would be perfect. And then suddenly you've got a receiving room that not only could you run the 2 receiver sets that Shane Waldren ran in Seattle for forever, but Bill, if somebody gets hurt, the offense is not just busted. And thank goodness for that. I mean, we've seen enough of these Bears offenses that it's all hinged around one player. He goes down, offense is over. Offense is canceled for the week. we're done. And that's just not what the Bears are looking at. So suddenly you've got points of failure that are allowed in this offense. The receiving room is exciting. This feels so new and so well put together that it is foreign to look at, but I love it.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And while we're talking about Keenan Allen, let's talk about long-term viability with Keenan here. And I think a lot of Bears fans have cooled on it because when he was first brought in and, oh, the Bears are taking on the full $23 million salary, that instant reaction was, well, you're not going to pay someone $23 million and not, for one season and not extend him. But I look at that, and I know Bears fans have cooled on it. I'm really okay with whatever happens with Keenan Allen at the end of the season. Now, if Keenan has an elite year and has 1,200 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns, certainly the Bears are going to want to keep him around. Absolutely. That means he'll have great chemistry with Caleb Williams. But at the same time, Keenan Allen has never once said, hey, I'm about to get into my kind of mid-30s here. I just want to find a place I'm comfortable, sign a contract, stick around for a few seasons. He has not said that. Now, he said that he likes what he's seen in Chicago so far, but anytime that contract gets brought up, he does talk about, well, and I know everyone's like, oh, well, he smirked when he said the market just got reset. Well, yeah, it did. And he's not going to get paid what Justin Jefferson got paid, obviously. But there's a trickle-down effect. And we still need to see what CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase and all these guys are going to get. And then everyone's going to start getting slotted below. So if you thought you might be able to get Keenan Allen for $20 million next year, you may have to pay Keenan Allen $25 million next year now because of what these wide receiver contracts are. You've got a pending DJ Moore extension. There's a lot that goes into it. And Robert, when they talk about, well, you're paying him $23 million this season, I sit there and go, when the Bears made that trade, free agency was in essence over. And what I mean by that is, sure, everyone has to fill out their rosters, but every big, name, Hunter and Wilkins and Huff and all the potential guys that the Bears could potentially go for, they had all signed. There was no one left.
Oh, yeah.
That you could have given a 5-year, $100 million contract to and eaten up the remaining cap space the Bears had. You're talking about just rolling over space into the following season. The Bears had the money. They were able to get Keenan Allen for who he is for a ridiculous rate of a 4th-round pick because they took the salary. If they had forced the Chargers to eat some of that salary, that pick would have increased. So the fact that they said, all right, we'll take the salary, because we've got the money. We'll bring Keenan Allen here for Caleb Williams' rookie year, and we'll see what happens. And maybe Keenan Allen loves it here, Robert, and goes, you know what I want? I want a 3-year, $45 million deal or $50 million deal with $30 million guaranteed. And I just want to hang out here, and maybe I can win a Super Bowl with the Bears. That may be what he wants after this season, because he is getting into his twilight years of his NFL career. But he may want to try and break the bank one more time. He may say, my family is staying in Southern California, so I'm going to leave Chicago after this year and go play for the Rams or the Raiders or the Cardinals because I want to be closer to Los Angeles. So there's a lot of factors that come into play here. And like I said at the beginning of my comments here, I'm okay with whatever happens with Keenan Allen. I know he just brought in new agents. If he wants to try and break the bank and the Bears think they can make it work and keep him, great. If the Bears have to let him go, that's okay. Rome Odunze's lying in the wings behind him. Whatever happens here, this is still a positive impact what Keenan Allen is bringing to the Bears in 2024.
Oh yeah, I'm actually surprised there's been so much hand wringing, because while I understand that, I guess everybody wants to see the Bears' resources put towards the right things, like you're talking about, the Bears had kept a hole in their cap open, and obviously they were looking at receiving options. And for all of the people that want to see a complete built team, like, I think that there was still a small missed opportunity to add an edge rusher. I also think, Bill, that the moment that you don't add Keenan Allen, you've got tremendous pressure on Ryan Pohl's shoulders to get up from 9, because you can't just sit there and wait and hope that Rome Odunze falls to you. There's no way. I mean, as much as
let me just interrupt you on that, because I think that's a
Mhm.
really good point. Because let's say they can't land a receiver, and now he's sitting there. We've seen the videos of how much Ryan Poles was sweating that Rome Odunze pick at 9.
Right.
They probably need to move up to 7. And I think the Titans would have happily traded down to 9, because
Yep.
Latham still would have been there. So you got to probably trade up to 7 to try and get Rome Odunze. To get up to 7, that means you probably maybe you only give up the pick that was Torrey Taylor, but you might have to give up pick 75. Like, I'd have to look at the charts exactly, but let's just say you're able to move up to 7 with the 4th round pick. Okay, fine. Now you've lost a pick. Do you want to trade another pick to go get Austin Booker? Like, the fact that Keenan Allen let them stay at 9 and be patient for Rome Odunze may have also allowed them to have Torrey Taylor and Austin Booker on this roster.
Right.
Something that if they had to move up to get Odunze, they would have no Keenan Allen, no Torrey Taylor, and no Austin Booker, and just Rome Odunze if they don't make that move. Like, the amount of cascading effects is significant.
And that's not even to mention, Bill, that at least lately, when a team seems to openly declare that they have moved up in the draft with intent to draft X player, that creates an even stronger market than usual for somebody else to jump above that team and go get a different player. I understand it may have just always been possible, but I have a hard time believing that Atlanta takes Michael Penix right when they do at number 8 if they weren't worried about Minnesota coming up and getting Michael Penix somewhere else. They didn't think that they could just casually trade back, because they were worried about whether it's the Raiders, whether it's Denver, all these other teams that were in the market for a quarterback taking a guy that they really liked. And if the Bears had traded up to 7, let's say they did it before the draft, well, now does everybody want to get up to 4, 5, and 6 so that they can make sure that they get Marvin Harris?
Right, we heard how much the Chargers wanted to trade down and just decided to stick and pick alt. Maybe
exactly.
The Chargers are trading down now.
It's not to say that it's a given. It's to say that part of the magic here with Keenan Allen is that you take one of the most important seasons of a young quarterback's incubation, that rookie season. You supply him an option route master that's been there for quite some time, an instantaneous locker room leader. Because as much as I love Rome Odunze, and as much as Caleb Williams seems to love Rome Odunze, is he going to get off the bus catching 11 passes? I doubt it. So now you've got a guy that can fill that role. And I mean, truly, Bill, starting next year, you don't need it as badly. It would be nice to have, but you needed it for this year, because the hope is that next year and years beyond, Caleb really hits that next level and starts doing the Aaron Rodgers thing where he invents James Jones. He invents Tyler Scott. He invents another receiver who we've yet to add onto the squad instead of providing.
Janice, remember?
Right.
What was his first? I can't even remember his first name.
Which one? Geronimo Allison's the one I always think of.
Janice. Janus. I can't think of his first name right now, and I have to look it up. But yeah, he made some of those Hail Mary catches from Rodgers.
Invented Alan Lazard. Lazard goes to the Jets and disappears, and it's like I think he's a good player.
Jeff Janis.
The part with Keenan that I think is so interesting is that Keenan right now is obviously posturing as if he plans to hit the market after the Bears. He's not worried about the Bears. But, Bill, a season is a long time. And Keenan's history in the league, if you had to guess how many playoff games he's played in, how many games do you think he's played in?
Playoff games?
Total playoff games.
4.
5. Good guess. 3 runs, though. Only 3. In 2014, the Chargers beat the Bengals, and then Keenan Allen had 6 catches for 142 yards in a loss to the Super Bowl runner-up Denver Broncos. In 2019, they ground out a game against Baltimore, and they lost to the 2019 Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. And then we all know what happened in 2023, not too long ago, against Jacksonville, because that was one of the more famous games we've seen lately. If the Bears feel like a stable playoff contender, like you're saying, Bill, maybe Keenan hits January and goes, do I really want to go play for, some team like the Patriots? Like, do I really want to go to New England? Who's going to pay me an awful lot? Do I really want to go play for Washington? Do I really want to do any of this? I could just stay here and they'll pay me enough. So we'll see. It almost feels to me, Bill, like a rom-com, like one of those enemies to friends romantic comedies where it's like they start postured against each other, but then through trial and tribulation, they slowly grow closer over time.
Right.
We'll see, because my guess would be that things get extra amenable if Keenan has only just about 1,000 yards, but DJ Moore still catches a bunch, and then Rome Odunze has plenty himself, where Keenan feels like he's valuable, but not totally irreplaceable, right? But if Keenan's the feature, the Bears will just pay him gobs. If Keenan gets hurt and plays 7 games, maybe the Bears don't bring him back. All in all, my favorite part is that the Bears' future does not hinge on Keenan Allen.
Right.
But he's awfully helpful in the short term.
Absolutely. The flexibility they have is great. And let's talk about Rome here for a second. I know you brought him up a little bit, but let's just talk about Rome in year 1. Forget about how he projects. I think we've done plenty of talking about the speed that he has, his ability on 50-50 balls, just the pure talent. We know it's there. But let's talk about carving out a role for Rome Odunze in year 1, because we've all seen the CHGO famous interview with JSN, where basically JSN, you could tell, did not like Shane Waldren. Now, I look at that and go, I'm assuming JSN was upset because he didn't feel he was featured enough in the offense. Shane Waldron does like 2 tight end sets. He does go to them. It's not like he lives in 2 tight end sets 80% of the time, but he does go to them on a heavier rate than a lot of other offensive coordinators. So JSN's going to, with Lockett and Metcalf, JSN's going to be the guy that's going to be on the sidelines for those 2 tight end sets. When he's out there, you still have Lockett and Metcalf. You have 2 really good receivers, like you would with Moore and Allen this season. You've got a Cole Kmet, who is going to be a nice safety valve on the 7 or 8 yards down the field, out in the flat. You're going to have DeAndre Swift leaking out of the backfield, another nice safety valve. Now, I'm not saying Rome Odunze is a safety valve, but I am saying you've got Keenan Allen here. You got DJ Moore as your potential game breaker. You've got Keenan Allen as your quarterback's best friend. You've got other safety valves with Kmet and potentially Gerald Everett and DeAndre Swift. I'm not saying Rome Odunze needs to get 1,200 yards this year. If I think he can carve a nice role for himself and gain 700 yards and have a great season as a rookie. But how does Rome Odunze, in your eyes, carve out a role for himself in this offense when he is the rookie and there's this much other talent for Williams to throw?
So it's funny when you look at JSN. I'm a huge JSN homer, right? I really like JSN. I think his footwork is really solid. His ability to beat press is exceptional, and he can get open at all 3 levels, which especially in last year's receiver class made him the wide receiver 1. But I do agree with everybody that said that JSN doesn't really stack up to the receivers of right now. This isn't me trying to be a hater, Bill. It's more that what JSN's probably most frustrated with is that his coach thought DK Metcalf was better at winning down the sidelines than JSN. Was he wrong? He thought that Tyler Lockett was more trustworthy in terms of identifying space over the middle. Was he wrong? I mean, there's a specific role Shane had for JSN, which was catch the ball short with a screen and go beat somebody in the open field for yards after catch. And I thought JSN actually did pretty well in that role. It's just not a star receiver's role. And so I'm not surprised after I started watching more Seahawks film that JSN didn't like Waldren that much, because JSN basically got picked in the first round and then got told by his coach that he was a 3rd receiver and a role player and didn't like it. With Rome, first of all, Rome seems a little more okay with that. Rome seems to have a more of an understanding that he's coming into a sweet receiver room and he's excited to play whatever role he wants. But also, Bill, Rome's not the yak god. So he's not going to just get stuffs down there. If anything, what I think Rome's going to end up doing is being a major piece outside receiver. He's going to block a lot. And most importantly, I think DJ Moore and Rome are going to be a double deep threat set that when you're attacking cover 4 or cover 3, or even cover 2, but a little less so, you're going to be able to use Rome to pull coverage away from DJ Moore or use DJ Moore to pull coverage away from Rome. That Caleb's got 2 guys downfield, one of which is a touchdown threat anytime you give him the ball in DJ, and the other where if you put the ball in his general direction, you've got as good a chance as any that he might just go up and get it. And so that gives the Bears a great double option when it comes to chunk plays that it wouldn't surprise me to see Rome immediately fit in on. And then the moment you've got Rome Odunze running deep a bunch, suddenly you can run those digs and curls that DBs that are giving him way too much space underneath leave wide open. This is the playbook to success with Rome Odunze, right? But I think it starts with, if you can visualize it, Bill, double posts down the middle of the field where you've got DJ running it from the slot. So he breaks across the safety's face against, like, imagine it in a Packer uniform, like cover 3. And then you've got the outside corner on the other side sprinting to try to catch up with DJ Moore. And if the safety chooses to take Rome Odunze, then DJ's wide open. And if the safety drives down on DJ, you still see Caleb loft the ball well over the field. And what do you know? It's number 15 underneath it. That's where I think he starts, which sounds like an easy thing to say, like, oh, just throw it deep. But that is where we saw Rome have a lot of success, and probably the red zone too, where while DJ's good, that's where his size, I think, bites him more than anywhere else on the football field. And Keenan's also good, and Keenan will be ready to catch those slants that Caleb really likes to throw. But if it's me and I'm just stoking Bears fan passion, I hope, Bill, that we see Rome Odunze become that Alan Lazard-like red zone slant guy that Aaron Rodgers hit for touchdown after touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, because that route in particular always tilted me harder than anything else in Bears-Packers games, because it looks so easy when they do it right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like where Caleb puts the ball out and Rome just catches it amidst a DB that's draped all over him. And if the Bears could do that, I mean, gosh, you're probably adding like 3.5 points a game, because they had so many issues at times passing in the red zone last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get off the wide receiver group, let's talk just briefly about Tyler Scott. And you talk about deep balls with Rome Odunze. That's obviously what we thought Tyler Scott's role was going to be last season, but we saw Scott struggle to adjust under deep balls,
right,
catch them that when they hit him in the hand. There were obviously issues there with Tyler Scott. Now, assuming, and I understand you can't really assume it with an older player like Keenan Allen, who has had some injuries, but assuming those 3 top guys stay relatively healthy, Tyler Scott's opportunities are going to be very limited this year. He's just not going to be able to get on the field very often. But if there is an injury where DJ misses a couple games, Rome misses a couple games, Keenan misses 5 or 6 games, and if they are all kind of scattered throughout the season, well, then Tyler Scott's going to be able to play half a season as wide receiver 3. We'll get an idea of where he is. But regardless of what these opportunities are, I think what Tyler Scott is going to have to show growth within those opportunities. He doesn't need to have 600 yards to be like, oh, Tyler Scott's established himself in the league. He may only have 250 yards receiving, but it's how did he get those 250 yards? Did he not drop balls? Did he make the adjustments on a deep ball that he needed to make that he didn't show last year? So I think that's important growth for Tyler, well, in terms of it'll be per opportunity, not in any kind of volume statistics. But I do want to bring up one thing, Robert, and I think we've done a pretty good job not talking too much fields. But Tyler Scott, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but Tyler Scott in 4 games, in a 4-game stretch last year, looked better than he did in the other games. I'm not saying he looked great, but he looked better. He looked more a piece of the offense, more involved, got more, opportunities to catch the football, more targets his way. And that's when Tyson Bagent was out there. And we've talked about Fields' inability. It's DJ Moore check down, right? Whether check down's Cole Kmet or a running back out of the backfield, that was the basic premise of the offense. There weren't intermediate, options that Fields was going for.
And I want to, if you don't mind, in the middle of the point, I want to just color that a little bit, that these were true checkdowns too. These were I'm dumping it to the running back, not the running back ran a route into the flat. You know what I mean, Bill? This is Cole Kmet has blocked for me and he has turned around. Like these weren't a flat route over the middle, like things that you would consider check down like, but they're within the progression. This is a check down. This is like the basis level. It's not me trying to hate on Fields. It's me saying, like you're talking about, this is Roschon Johnson and Cole Kmet. And sometimes it was Khalil Herbert. And those are the only three guys that got this football. Keep going.
Yeah. So when we look at how that offense was executed last season, when Darnell Mooney is getting squeezed out, Tyler Scott's got no shot. Now, again, Tyler Scott's a 4th round pick. Tyler Scott did have hands issues and like I said, adjustment issues. So he may not pan out. It may be more on Tyler Scott than it was on Justin Fields. But I do think there's at least something to consider this year when we watch Tyler Scott and see if he can potentially develop. We don't need Tyler Scott as Bears fans. We don't need him to develop into a 1,200 yard guy. If he can develop into a 600-700 yard receiver as a wide receiver 3 in a passing offense where Caleb Williams has DJ Moore and Rome Odunze as his top 2 options and a solid pass catching tight end in Cole Kmet, that's all they need out of Tyler Scott if he can get there. But it will be interesting to see, not only does Tyler Scott eliminate some of the issues he clearly had on the field that were independent of an offense or a quarterback, but it'll also be interesting to see when he has those opportunities, if he is more an integral part of the offense with Williams than he was able to be with Fields.
I hope so. And it's all going to come down to what I think, whether Tyler Scott's able to maximize what I believe he's good at, and that is what he does after the catch. It was hard to see last year because, like you're talking about, Scott really didn't get the ball outside of the occasional end around, which he made some noise off of, but Velus was better at them, so everybody forgets it. But I can't help looking at this, Bill, and thinking, if I'm Shane Waldren, the obvious place I'm going to put Tyler Scott is wherever Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze are not. And yeah, all right, easy, Robert, easy with the genius, right? Duh, he's going to go where the other 3 aren't. But to me, that feels like underneath. That feels like Keenan's going to run an option route like over here with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze running something over the top of them. And if the defense shifts towards that naturally, dump it off to Tyler Scott and let him turn up the field. But if you remember a couple different plays last year, in particular one along the sidelines that set up a field goal that almost won a game for the Bears, comes to my mind in the Browns game, Bill. Tyler has a little bit of juice when the ball is in his hand. You see that
absolutely.
You see that former running back start to pop. And this is a huge if Tyler Scott got a pocket of space, made a linebacker miss, and then takes a good angle against a safety, he's the kind of guy that could sneak his way into a 45-yard gainer out of absolutely nowhere that feels like nobody else is on the TV screen. And you see this happen for other offenses. It doesn't happen for the Bears fan, but if you're watching Red Zone, it happens every week, right? Somebody just has that jailbreak moment. And I hope that Tyler is ready to catch passes that just come from 10 to 15 yards depth, if that, because I see him as an underneath guy, but one that can be helpful. Like, he had moments when it came to one-cut route running that were passable at the very least. Everybody's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but like you're talking about, Bill, we haven't even talked about the Bears, the guy that's been the number 2 receiver for the Bears for 4 years. We have yet to bring up his name because he's been jammed into every single offense I've ever seen him in. Scott just wasn't going to get the ball last year. And as Tyson Bagent learned the guys around him, he threw to Scott less because he was more comfortable throwing to DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and Cole Kmet. So I'm curious to see what Scott brings to the table, but in those empty sets where the other 3 receivers get all kinds of attention and Cole Kmet flares out over here, so the linebacker just automatically drives on him, I find myself wondering on 3rd and 11, could Tyler Scott get the yards? Because it wouldn't take him that much time to cross that 11-yard mark, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, we'll see. And while you were talking there, I did look up some numbers and do some quick math. So Bagent played 4 games plus the part of the Vikings game. So Bagent played about 25% of the games. With Tyson Bagent, Tyler Scott had 42% of his targets. So you can see how much more Bagent went to him compared to Fields. And again, like I said, there's a lot that goes into that, but we'll see what happens with Tyler moving forward. But obviously we haven't gotten to the offensive line yet. We need to get to that, but talk a little bit about tight end and running back here. I don't think there's too much to talk about Cole. I think, Cole fits into this offense well, with a little versatility. He's developed into a solid player. He is not ever going to be confused with Travis Kelce, but he's not ever going to be confused with Deion Sims, if we remember those Bears years. So he's a solid player. He's going to be a nice asset for Caleb Williams to have. So more so, I'm curious of your thoughts on Gerald Everett. I like the signing. Obviously, he's familiar with Shane Waldren, and I think a lot of Bears fans have pushed him aside because of the 3 wide receivers, because of Cole Kmet, because of DeAndre Swift, that, Gerald Everett doesn't have a role in this offense. And OTAs are OTAs, and I get that. Talking to the beat guys that were there, and even some of the highlights that the Bears decided to put out, Gerald Everett was involved in the offense. He was being utilized. Again, it's OTAs. On some of those OTAs, Keenan Allen sat out or someone else sat out. So, you're not getting the full complement of the offense. But I expect Gerald Everett to have a role. I'm not expecting 600-700 yards, but I do think him and Cole could combine for 1,000 yards receiving out of the tight end position. If Cole's getting you 600 and maybe Everett's getting you 350 to 400, I do think there's a role there. I do think it's going to be interesting to see what Waldren chooses to do, because like we said, he likes 2 tight end sets, but has he had a third receiver like Rome Odunze at the same time? And, everyone immediately said when Waldren was hired, well, Kari Blasingame is gone because we didn't see Waldren use a fullback in Seattle, and he liked using tight ends as H-backs. But he doesn't have tight ends he can use as H-backs on this roster. So Kari Blasingame is still here. Will he be cut before, Labor Day? Maybe. Maybe not. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits here. But I think these tight ends are going to be utilized. I think Waldren is going to keep both of them involved in the offense. And I think Everett, I know we thought Bob Tonyan might have been able to be something, and he was a debacle. And the Bears really have never found that really good second tight end. But I think Everett's going to make, again, like I said, he's not going to turn heads, but I do think he will be a noticeable player on this offense.
He's a funny one because his biggest skill set is also yards after catch. You just don't hear that often from tight ends. And so I'm interested to see how Everett fits in, because he's so far down the depth chart, Bill, that you could tell me that if the Bears were all healthy, he ended up with 200 yards and made next to no plays. I'd believe it, just because there's only so many mouths to feed. We're still asking a rookie quarterback to feed them. We're probably not throwing for 5,000 yards. If we throw for 5,000 yards in this season, it will be a parade planner of a season. Like, I would absolutely, let's say they get bounced to the first round of the playoffs with Caleb Williams threw for 5,000 yards, throw the parade anyways. Like, just empty the clip anyways. With Everett, I think it's interesting because I expected him to be a little bit better of a blocker. And this leads us back to the age-old question of, are we going to use Cole Kmet as a Y, or are we going to keep using him as a dual guy?
Right.
The moment that he's a primary receiving threat, where's Everett going to stand? Like, I'm right there with you. He's got the ability to be pretty involved in this offense. He's a very capable receiver, but he's also more the uber athlete type of player, and he's aging. So how quickly is he going to fall off from where he was? I'm having a hard time tracking it, but I'm trying to be more aware after the Bob Tonyan debacle that, like you're talking about. I said, how bad is the ACL going to really be? I mean, it's got to get better this year, right? It didn't. And so we're all trying to be safe as we go about it. The one part about Kmet I do think it's lost is, so Jalen Johnson probably has 1 to 2 good years left in him. That's not me trying to be a hateful person. It's me saying corners don't typically last. And so as Jalen gets further and further into his career, we will see how things go. Still love the extension. One of the most important players on that Bears defense, blah, 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 blah. that's for next podcast. The big one, Bill, that I wanted to talk about is that Cole got drafted so young that we started to say this is who he is about 3 years into his career. I don't know about you. I thought last year was the best year he has ever had.
Oh, absolutely.
From a semantics perspective, too, though. Like, instead of Matt Nagy force feeding Cole Kmet the ball as if he's trying to prove that it wasn't a bad draft pick, it felt like Cole was not only earning the targets, but stealing the occasional football out of the air, creating separation using physicality. So then I remember last year I started talking to some fantasy guys, and they said, well, yeah, this is normal. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, don't you know about tight end breakout age? It's like 26.
Yeah, it's
and
later.
So
look at Travis Kelce's first few years in the league.
Exactly. And tight end is typically a position, this one I know because I've been doing draft stuff for the last 2 years, that gets drafted way older. You get a lot more 23 and 24-year-olds that get drafted a little higher. So it does have me wondering, Bill, hey, not to gas anybody up, does Cole Kmet have one more gear in him? Because he's right at that breakout age this season. And we hope he's playing with the best quarterback that he's yet played with. So is there more in there? I don't know, but we'll find out together. Overall, it's a really healthy group of pass catchers. That's before we add Swift, who's also in that category of dump the ball off to him in space and good things should happen. I know it's a meme at this point. Swift kind of does play like he's blind. Like the game does feel as if his feet are faster than his ability to keep up with it. And that's okay because he's a running back. Wind him up, point him in the right direction, pick up a bunch of yards. But so he also doesn't break a bunch of tackles. This is the inverse David Montgomery, Bill.
Right.
I just put that together. This is the inverse David Montgomery, where you get him a crease, he'll take the crease. You breathe on him, he's probably going down. But there's a place for all of this on the Bears offense. I do think Swift brings the floor up. We keep wanting to talk around the fact that Khalil Herbert's hands are made of stone, like to a degree that feels unrealistic. But here we are years later. Like, I can't believe that a professional athlete is having so much trouble catching lollipops, but it feels like he is. I don't know how you feel. That's how I feel at this stage. And Roshan, as much as I like him, did not, especially post-concussion, unfortunately. I don't want to pretend like I know anything about the severity of that concussion. It did not feel like he had an edge. So it's nice to see the Bears add at the position. Contract be darned. Like, the contract part's a separate discussion, but the player on the field, helpful player to have, and ultimately helps round out a tight end and running back room that when you support this wide receiver room like that, it feels like Caleb could close his eyes and throw to a solid player. That's all you're looking for.
Absolutely. And just to kind of wrap up on that conversation and running backs, and I'll throw it back to you one more time before we get to O-line. Like, you talk about Kmet and the later development with tight ends. And I was able to interview Cole a couple of years ago at the Super Bowl, and I brought it up to him, and he didn't disagree. He didn't give it his full endorsement, but if he did, it would also come across as an excuse.
Right.
Cole's rookie year was the COVID year, where everything was on Zooms. There was no cohesiveness. And you talk to anyone who knows the league, they talk about, like you talked about, tight end growth is slow. It is a really hard position to transition from the college to the NFL game. And Cole's first off season as a rookie was a mess because, forget the Foles, Trubisky, all that crap that was going on as well. The fact is that he wasn't able to get with the other tight ends and work with the tight ends and the coaches on the field. Everything was disjointed and very strange. So that kind of put Cole behind an 8-ball in his rookie season anyway. And in year 2, he's playing catch up for any of the things he may have been behind on year 1. So I do think you have to look at Cole a little differently. And he's now, like you said, entering that stretch where we really could see the best of Cole. Mercedes Lewis, I think, was an important signing because of the fact that there was no why that you could trust. If Cole goes down for a couple games, there was no one to utilize. And I get Lewis is a bit of a, tips your hand a little bit because of his lack of ability in the passing game. And we know Shane Waldren does not like to tip his hand with personnel, which I love because after seeing Matt Nagy and even Luke Getsy a little bit, we've had plenty of hand tipping in terms of what the play is going to be based on personnel. That brings me to the running back room where DeAndre Swift, we've been so used to hearing committee for running backs, and talking to a couple guys on the beat, talking to Adam Rank, even on this podcast. No one really believes that this is a committee anymore. This is DeAndre Swift's backfield. He was brought in here for a reason. And if you talk to a lot of people, because of the fact that Roschon Johnson can do a lot more and can, get in between the tackles pretty well, that Roschon Johnson feels more like feels more like he's going to be Shane Waldron's RB2, and that Khalil Herbert, who we all love as a runner, and he is absolutely talented, don't get me wrong. When you want to talk about tipping your hand, when Khalil Herbert is out there, it's a run because his pass blocking is not good. His pass catching is not good. He is limited as to what he can be. He is a great change of pace, running back, pure runner. There's plenty of positives he brings, but I do wonder, is Khalil Herbert going to find himself as the RB3, maybe back on kick returns with Velus? I think that could be a potential really good role for him as well. And this is just his last year in a Chicago Bears uniform because he is a free agent at the end of the year and he just gets phased out. So I really do wonder, again, you also want to talk about Ryan Pace guys versus Ryan Poles guys. Roschon is Ryan Poles guy. Khalil Herbert is still a holdover from Ryan Pace's final draft. It does play into it here, and I do wonder if we're going to see Khalil Herbert's role greatly reduced.
I wouldn't surprise me. Like you're talking about, the Shane Waldron didn't like a lot of two back sets, and so he tended to ride he rode Kenneth Walker as hard as he could ride him. Now, Kenneth is a stud, and I think Swift is fine. Swift is definitely better than some of the runners that the Bears have had. I actually thought the Bears running back room underperformed pretty badly last year compared to expectations. Sort of maybe a warning flag. We'll see, Bill, of do you get what you pay for when it comes to running backs, at least to some capacity? And when we talked all year about how the Bears running back room was modern and cheap, did they end up getting guys that also weren't good enough? Swift is definitely better than that, I think, head and shoulders so, but he's not in the upper echelon. What is the upper echelon? How hard can these guys, or how long can these guys sustain the upper echelon? Did Seattle even think Kenneth Walker was that good, given that they spent a second rounder on Zach Charbonnet? Same year. I don't know. Good question. But at least with the Bears running back room where it is right now, I don't think Swift tips the hand much. He's not a phenomenal pass blocker, but Mercedes Lewis thankfully is. Let's talk about the rest of the Bears offensive line. You ready for that one?
Let's dive in.
I think this Bears offensive line is really interesting because they are very insulated against being awful, even at the cost of maybe being good. I hope this makes sense. The Bears have enough depth to where even if Nate Davis flat cannot play this season, and you would hope that he rebounds, you still have a starting caliber offensive line that does not make you rich. And at least with where things have been in the Bears, or in Chicago land for a little while, that's an upgrade over where things have been. Now, a lot of this depends on whether Tevin is made of fiberglass or glass panel. And this depends on whether Braxton Jones can benefit from Caleb Williams scaring left tackle or scaring left side edge rushers into not just bull rushing him and letting Caleb Williams leak out the side. This depends on whether Darnell Wright can take a step forward, whether Ryan Bates can play a full season as a starter and not turn into Lucas Patrick. Oh my gosh, Lucas Patrick's decay was unbelievable, Bill. I still can't believe he went from this guy's all right to this guy is terrible.
Yeah.
But it's been a funny offensive line dance in Chicago. You've got a quarterback that will hang on to the ball for 5.5 seconds if you let him. That is bad. That should not work. And it has made the Bears offensive line look awful. But I also think that they've been so bad that, kind of like 2022, Bill, we are now talking to ourselves into thinking that they're better than they are. They're still not a great unit, but they've got enough decent bodies on the roster where they shouldn't be horrible. I don't know how well they're going to do in the run game. Their run unit is kind of lacking right now, but maybe wide zone helps you out with that. The inside zone is a weird play call because it really never pops for much anyways. So at least in my experience, I'm intrigued to see what you think of this Bears offensive line. I frankly think you know line better than I do in many cases. But as I look at it, the best thing you could say about it is that you surrounded a rookie, or you surrounded a rookie with an offensive line that should be what Brandon Thorne calls 20th best. And that, as he said, that's an accomplishment for a team with a number 1 overall pick. I tend to agree, even though we are really damning with faint praise here.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I want to start the focus on the interior, and I'll mention the tackles briefly since you brought them up. Like you said, Darnell Wright needs to take a step forward. Darnell Wright, to me, last year, obviously, I didn't rank them. He was like a league average tackle. Great place to start as a rookie. That's phenomenal. That is not a knock on him. That is a very positive thing to say. Tackles take a couple of years to go to do that. Now, Darnell Wright needs to take a step forward where you're sitting there going, no, this is a guy who's a cornerstone piece. Because of where he was as a rookie, it looks like he will be a cornerstone piece. But on the other side, to me, Braxton Jones, I've had some people disagree with me on this. To me, the Karan Amagaji selection is a hand tip from Ryan Poles about what he sees as Braxton Jones. I talked to EJ Snyder and Brett Coleman on this podcast, and Brett Coleman thinks that Amagaji could be inside a guard. EJ thinks it's just merely a competition thing. I look at that and go, to me, Ryan Poles sees Braxton Jones at $1 million a year as a phenomenal left tackle. At 16, 17, $18 million a year, not the left tackle you want to have as part of your line moving forward. That's the way I see it. So it's Braxton is the left tackle this year, maybe next year, depending on Amagaji's development. But assuming Amagaji is in a position to start in 2026, it's his job and Braxton Jones is gone. That's the way I see the left tackle position going. What I think is more interesting, Robert, is the interior, and it comes back to Nate Davis. And I understand that Nate Davis is pretty much public enemy number 1 of Chicago Bears fans at this point. I also know that I am part of the reason that, because that flame got fanned last year because of a report that I put out right after they selected him, that Mike Vrabel did not like him for a variety of reasons. I didn't get into the specifics, but it's clear now. And again, he lost his mother last year. It's a tragedy. He had a high ankle sprain. That's really hard on offensive linemen. There were reasons for Nate Davis' struggles, but at the same time, Nate Davis did sit out a lot of practices. Even when he was there, he sat out practices. The Bears were vague about why he was sitting out, and I understand he was going through things mentally. But when you enter this season, if you want to give him a pass, and I give him a decent pass on last year, but also because I'm going to give him that pass, he does not get any benefit of the doubt this year. And the fact that he did not go balls to the walls at OTAs this year is a problematic start for Nate Davis. And I think the Bears know it's a problematic start, because the way I understood this is that they wanted Ryan Bates to be the starting center with Jenkins and Davis flanking him. And if Jenkins or Davis were injured, that Bates would slide over to guard and Coleman Shelton was your top interior backup and he would move to center. The problem with that is you want your center and your quarterback to have very good chemistry. You need training camp to build it up. That is why Connor Williams, to me, is not an option. While I'm confident that Ryan Poles was interested in Connor Williams prior to the ACL injury in week 15, 16, whatever it was, at this point now, I know Connor Williams people say that he is healthy and he is ready to start training camp. To me, I'm just calling BS. You're not tearing your ACL in December and doing full team drills on July 15th. There's just no way. So Connor Williams may be ready for training camp in the fact that he is there and participating and lifting weights and running. But is he going to be doing full team drills with Caleb Williams? No, I don't think it's a possibility. So if Connor Williams isn't an option, then you got to go with what you have. And what you have is the idea of having Ryan Bates as the center, unless one of the guards is out, does not build chemistry if Nate Davis is constantly sitting out practices and Ryan Bates is being moved over to guard. So when, I don't remember if it was Poles or Eberflus, I think it was Eberflus, towards the end of OTAs and minicamp, that basically said there's open competition. And a lot of people are like, oh, Shelton Bates. I didn't take that as a Shelton versus Bates debate at center, I took that as Nate Davis may be our OL6 this year because we can't rely on him to start at right guard.
I mean, it's funny you use the word rely, right? Because in the games that we saw Nate Davis play, especially early in the season, Bill, that first game against the Packers, you're already going to have like 4 solid memories of what I'm about to talk about. Way too many snaps where he got beat way too fast.
Oh, he was bad.
The funny part about when we talk about Darnell Wright is everybody's got different expectations for what they want out of different players. I thought Wright's run blocking left a lot of meat on the bone, but as a pass protector, he got beat clean very rarely. And it was one of my favorite things about what we saw. He got beat often, but he lost real slow and made everybody take the long way around.
His game where he neutralized Max Crosby with one arm is like the game to me that you circle and go, this guy has it.
Yep, exactly. And my favorite part is that he's got enough power in his shoulders and his arm to drive guys around the edge in a way that, look at Braxton. I mean, Braxton's got every bit the length, but none of that strength that he's pulling from his core, shoulder, and arm to drive somebody around the edge. And you see it soften the edge and create problems in pass pro. Blah, 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 tackle stuff. I like Darnell Wright. The main thing about Davis is I don't think any of us would have really minded him missing a bunch of OTAs had he come in and played serviceable guard, lose, but lose slowly, all the stuff that we're used to. That didn't happen. He played an unacceptable brand of guard that will get Caleb Williams killed, and in this sense will create major turnover problems because that's how you get Caleb to do too much. Play a guy like that, right? And that's the kind of thing that what I'm trying my best, Bill, not to give way to, but it keeps scratching at me, is generally if you ask people questions and they tell you answers, it's probably the truth in football. And they are not speaking well enough about Davis right now for us to think that anything's different. And if it's not different, why would I tell myself that just because he had an awful year personally last year, that it's going to get markedly better this year when they are planning around it not being better? And so maybe we have the answer that I don't want, but need to just accept now. That Coleman Shelton, who's a perfectly capable center, he's what everybody wanted Sam Mustipher to be, the lightweight center that is he's just an obstacle in the run game. He's going to quickly get to his spot and immediately lose unless he's playing against a second level guy. But hey, Bill, he can snap. And he can snap very consistently, which is, thank goodness. I don't know. We'll see. But the biggest problem that I see with the offensive line is, and I know I'm talking to a lineman when I say this, offensive lines are really hard to build because as far as how to convincingly make this line better, you need a bunch of first and second round picks. You only have so many of them. Like if you want a serviceable tackle, you need to spend a top 10 pick right now, based on what data keeps telling us. As much as you said, Bill, you want Darnell Wright to be a cornerstone. If he stays exactly like he was last year, that is a standard outcome of the 10th pick in the draft at tackle, which is silly. That doesn't feel real, right? That it's that expensive, but then Robert Hunt gets paid $20 million a year to play guard. Like, offensive lines are hard to build, especially when it comes to just how tough it is to upgrade. So the Bears do feel like they're in a little bit of a rock and a hard place, but I think they've made the best moves they can. I'm interested to see, for instance, Bill, could Karan Amagdaji provide something positive to the Bears if they have to abandon the Nate Davis plan earlier than they wanted to? And then Tevin Jenkins gets hurt and Amagdaji slips from left tackle to left guard. Would he be able to be better than a Rashad Coward type or contribute more than Jatiri Carter?
It'd be Jatiri Carter at this point. Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I have no idea. And if he could, that'd be positive. But we'll see. I think if Nate Davis doesn't come ready to play, that's a pretty decent blow to an offensive line that did not need to already start cycling through their insurance plans. But that's offensive line for you. Dudes get hurt.
Yeah, and that's the thing where offensive line is tricky is the sum is greater than the individual parts. You need them to be cohesive and work well together. which is where I actually had some hope for Nate Davis because I thought he had a really good game. I think it was against the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was like, okay, he's got these issues
We're
behind
fine
him.
now.
He's going to start playing well. He got hurt, came back, was just dreadful. So, you know, when we look at this offensive line, Robert, and we're going to have to talk to about Tevin Jenkins here before we wrap up this first part, you know, looking at how, like you talk about building an offensive line. All right. Well, Darnell Wright is there, you know, 5th-year option for at least 4 more years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not bad. I expect him to most likely earn an extension, but he's there for 4 years. 4 years is an eternity. If we believe that Karan Amagaji is the plan at left tackle, you've got 4 years built out there at left tackle as well. May not be, you know, Trent Williams level play over there, but they're expecting serviceable play out of left tackle with excellent play out of right tackle. I think that's the plan.
It's pretty normal, just to make sure we're both on you know this, but I want everybody else to hear it. Football fan, think about any offensive line that you like, any offensive line, any of them. They aren't 2 first-round picks. Generally speaking, you have 1 cheap one and 1 really expensive tackle. When we're talking about tackles, it just so happens that the Eagles have a sick right tackle and to pair with Lane Taylor. It just so happens that Lane Johnson, sorry. It just so happens that Mike McGlinchey, while a first-round pick paired with Trent Williams, is bad. And so he fits under this category. It's normal to have 1 tackle you help with the chip and 1 tackle that sits on an island. The Bears just put their good one on the right side, and it is breaking everybody's brain. Like, think about it, Bill. To me, the funniest part about this is that Darnell Wright snaps came against Rashawn Gary, Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter. Shocker, most NFL teams are putting their best rusher on the right side, but our brain goes left tackle, pass block, blind side, baby. Right, yeah. And I get it. But it's more to say that, like you're talking about, if your left tackle is not outright bad and your right tackle is standing on his own, this is fine, especially if it's cheap.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but that's where you get to the interior and go, when you start trying to project out this line and go, okay, so they're planning on being serviceable at left tackle. They're planning on having a solid right tackle. But then you look at the interior and you can make the argument that they don't have any building blocks along the interior. Now, I love Tevin Jenkins when he's on the field. Do the Chicago Bears. I mean, it was hard to hear as a Tevin Jenkins fan during OTAs, Tevin Jenkins go, I want to remain with the Chicago Bears. They haven't given me an offer. Like, that's hard. But at the same time, I go, they can't give him an offer. They can't extend him in August because when you're extending a player in August, you're extending him for the following years. He could get hurt significantly this year, and you've already committed to him for future years. That is a problem the Bears don't want to have. Now, I am sure at this point, Ryan Poles has looked and said, if you can tell me Tevin Jenkins is going to play 60 games for us over the next 4 years, where do I sign? I'm confident that that would be his thought process. But you don't know if Tevin Jenkins would be able to play 25 games over the next 4 years. Nope. He has already missed an entire season of football in 3 years. He missed, 6 last year, 4 the year before, and I think 9 the year before that. It's not sustainable. And weirdly, last year, Tevin Jenkins almost felt healthier to me than he has in the past, and he missed multiple games, even beyond the calf issue he had early in the season. So when you look at this and try and figure this out, now, I keep saying this, and this is not inside information. It is just my hunch. And looking at the center class next year, I haven't looked at it too carefully, but there aren't guys like JPJ and Barton and guys like that, first round caliber really jumping off the page. Even a Zach Frazier at this point really isn't in the cards. But I expect a couple centers to pop this year and look the part in college. I don't know who they're going to be. But when you have a Carolina Panthers pick that is a 33 to 40 somewhere, almost certainly, that's a prime spot to get the top center in the draft. And while Ryan Poles has not committed anything really to center at this point, Coleman Shelton, Lucas Patrick, these aren't big investments. I do wonder if he wants to draft his center. And I do wonder if next year may be the perfect time to target that. But at the same time, then you go, all right, Nate Davis, most likely not going to be here for the third year of his contract. Are you going to let Tevin Jenkins go? Then you're bringing in a rookie. Like, are you really going to completely overturn the interior three of that offensive line? Or can you come to some sort of agreement with Tevin Jenkins in November if he's been largely healthy and effective again for the season? He's only got 5 games left, and you can give him an extension at that point, maybe one that has some incentive, a lower base with some incentives in there about games played, whatever it might be. I don't know what Tevin's willing to do, but it's a tricky situation when you're looking at building up this offensive line. And we can look at it this year and go, Jenkins, Shelton, and Bates with Davis coming off the bench should be a serviceable interior offensive line. But if that entire offensive line is getting, and I know Ryan Bates has 2 years on his contract, if that entire offensive line gets blown up on the interior, Robert, that is not the kind of stability you're hoping for Caleb Williams.
Nope. I mean, at that point, you'd be hoping that you gave Caleb a stable enough base in his first year that he can navigate some trouble in his second year. But at the same time, Bill, again, I hope this isn't too incendiary here, but the Bears' interior offensive line, they have to do something. Each of them individually has to appeal to either of the two of us in some way this season for me to want to keep any of them. They're all decent stopgaps for now. But if Coleman Shelton looks like he's worth keeping, okay, you can throw a really cheap little 2-year deal his way, a la Andrew Billings, and I can rock with it. Because when you take a look across the league, I think center is a really funny position when we talk about it, Bill, because we all agree that Jason Kelce and Creed Humphrey are awesome. But Garrett Bradbury, when it doesn't really deliver much value, is a rough pick. Like the centers that aren't outright good are real bummers because everybody else in the league is putting a 5th, 6th, or 7th rounder on or into that line and living with it. Like,
yeah, that's the question. Are there 5 elite centers and then 6 through 20 are being separated by a few inches and it changes dramatically year over year?
Right, exactly. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Bears are looking to draft a guard next year, very early. But if you'll allow me to tease our defensive section, I don't know how many of their seconds they're going to have next year, because I wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Poles, depending on the way. Look, okay, I'll just put it this way, Bill. What a coincidence that the early part of the schedule is easy enough that the Bears could easily be in prime playoff position and looking to add at the deadline. And what a coincidence that deadline ads are very common at defensive line, their major position of need. So we'll see what happens to pick number or to the Carolina Panthers pick or their own second round pick. But it wouldn't surprise me if a guard is in the cards. And I bet they want to keep Tevin if Tevin proves himself. But also, Bill, say Tevin plays 17 games next year and he gives you B+ guard play. Are you extending him or do you need to see it again? Like, has this first 3 years of his career so far given you such where if you get the miracle season, you're still going to write it off and say, yeah, but do it one more time and then I'll pay you.
And that's the question, is what is Tevin willing to accept? And no one has any idea except Tevin and his agent, at this point, because would Tevin be willing to sign a 4-year contract where a year and a half of it is guaranteed? And the Bears could get out of it after 1 year if they had to, and easily after 2. Is he willing to do that? And you can pay him 15, 16, 17 million a year because you don't have dead cap if you have to move on from him. If Tevin's willing to bet on himself, then yeah, you can keep that player around. But if Tevin's like, no, I need 3 years guaranteed. I have injury problems. I have a back issue. I need to guarantee myself $50 million.
Right.
And I think I can get that on the open market. I don't see Ryan Poles doing that.
I don't either. It'll all depend, like you're talking about. And hopefully Caleb is able to learn relatively quickly. I truly believe that the more I've watched rookies grow, the more I've just started to wonder, Bill, I'm struggling to believe that you don't learn more in wins than you do in losses. which everybody thinks that you do the opposite. But a lot of these losing quarterbacks don't tend to learn much. They tend to get fried by the pressure of having to overcome and win 2 for every game you lose. So maybe for all we know, Caleb Williams can deal with a slightly more chaotic second or third season than we realize if his first season is paved with brick. And then you got to walk on the dirt road, right?
Absolutely. Like we talked about the foundation.
Exactly. So, but who knows? We don't. And this season's Bears are all going to, the line hinges more on Nate Davis than I would like. That's for sure. And not to mention, Bill, the other part of what goes on in my brain, I do think this line is better pass blockers than they are run blockers, in my opinion. That's I think Darnell Wright and Braxton are both fine when it comes to run blocking, but that right guard and center question and whether Tevin's going to stay healthy has me wondering if they'd really grade anybody in the run game, especially when their tight ends are okay at blocking. We like to hype Mercedes Lewis up as if he's outstanding. Dude, there's no tight end that's really outstanding in the run game right now outside of maybe George Kittle and a healthy Mark Andrews. But it's just not a great way to go get the edge. You're going to slash back the other direction. In most of those cases, we have a 13 personnel run on the right side. You're just going to end up with more space on the left when everybody starts to swing. All this to say, this team feels like it's set up to pass, but they have a rookie quarterback. So I'm really curious to see what identity Shane Waldren rocks out with, because that's going to really depend, or that's going to make a big difference on what this line and how this offense as a whole performs. Does Caleb Williams' pocket sense get him in more trouble than it gets him out of? If it's a boon for him early, Braxton Jones might suddenly look like the top half left tackle statistics have always been saying he is. If it's a bane, Caleb Williams may get strip sacked 4 times in 9 games, and then people are going to lose their mind. But we'll see.
Yes, we will see. All right. Before we actually reach 2 hours, we're going to wrap up part 1. That's it. Just part 1 of the podcast. As I said, Robert and I have a problem where neither of us understand how to shut up. So we hope you enjoyed this one. We were going to, the next podcast is going to be released this following Monday on the 15th. So make sure you stick around for that. But we are going to bring you part 2 of the training camp preview with the defense, and we'll talk a little Matt Eberflus as well. This is Bears Banter. Adios, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.